Alright, I know this playtest is, practically over, but I wanted to try and squeeze in one more video before the playtest completely ended. By the time you're seeing this video, there is a high likelihood that the playtest is no longer available. But I hope you enjoy nonetheless. But yeah, we're going to be going over Reaper. Reaper's really good at just DPMing down enemies. Definitely a good brawler. Not so much a flanker like the other attackers, but much more an in-your-face kind of vehicle. It's definitely good face-hugging enemies and stuff like that, unlike some of the other attackers. Definitely a good all-rounder. It's not super fast. It's not super slow. Doesn't overheat. Can consistently dish out DPM. It's a good vehicle overall, especially after the recent buffs. Alright, for the build on Reaper, slot 1 we're running UVFS. For the crit multiplier and the module damage and the extra shell speed is nice. Not as important. If you're not hitting crits, do this instead of this. Slot 2. I run magic for the traverse speed. Plus they act as shields for reducing heat and HE. You can run Lich. Slot 3, I use ANVVG2 for the reticle size and reticle size moving, standing and moving. Plus the green sector fast reload bar. So that's just like the width of it. Machine gun slot, useless. You can also run aiming speed because it does kind of have shit aiming speed early on. Slot 4, I don't think there was anything. I run this, but I think all of the options are good options. Slot 5, I run reticle size standing because a lot of the time when I'm shooting, even though I'm not sniping, I do like to stop in the vehicle since it's not super fast. I generally don't try to get behind people as much. And MX-18 can be fine. Don't go GMR. Slot 6, I use Brist for the reload time, and it reduces the misclick penalty by 25%. I did test GCC just to see which one actually lowers your reload even more. This is just a little bit more forgiving because it makes it wider, but this allows you to get essentially like a 1.8, 1.9 second reload once you get a kill. Slot 8, I run Prometheus full. The sides of the vehicle, so this whole backside, if hit, can be set on fire. It's a pretty big weak point. That's why I run it. Let me just make... forgot to go over slot 7. Slot 7, Sandstorm. Not too worried about sprint most of the time in this vehicle. But again, slot 8, 250 hit points is nice. The incoming crit damage reduction is nice. Hit print is nice. You don't get hit in the engine as often. At least I feel like you don't. The repair kit cooldown is nice, but overall I just prefer the extra hit points. Slot 10, I generally don't use the machine gun unless it's to secure a kill when the enemy is left at like less than 100 HP, so they can get my passive, or if I misclick and accidentally put myself in the debuff reload instead of buff reload. Slot 10, ramming damage resistance is nice. A lot of face hugging in this vehicle. The turret is really good. Ramming damage bonus is nice. Sprint energy cost reduction is nice. The incoming crit damage to Amarak is a little bit of a drawback. I won't lie. You don't get Amarak as much. Sometimes when you're angled like this, you can get Amarak in here, or sometimes in here. It doesn't happen super often. Usually, you get Amarak when you're fully side on, or if someone has the back of your turret. So it's not super much big of an issue for me. Then there's also Embargo. I like using this specifically because I'll ram choppers and it prevents them from turning on their minigun, because that's what the silence does. XM08, since the Reaper does have damage drop-off, it's not the best for sniping. It does mean that it is a little bit better at hitting shots when you're on the move, but I just prefer machete. I just feel like the debuffs on, like the buffs and debuffs, just it's not super important. Like, sure, these are essentially free debuffs for the most part, but it's not like this increases your DPM either. Sure, it makes you hit shots a little bit easier sometimes, but not all the time. Don't even go this. Not worth it. It's trash. This vehicle, you can run medkit or energy booster. If you do use the machine gun a lot, you'll notice you run out of energy. But medkit's the better option. Again, stim pack over extinguisher. Always. Perk 1, I use punchline for the increased aiming speed. You really do feel it. You can also use combat cruiser to start off with. Perk 2, I use Deadeye for the increased gun accuracy by 50%, but locked and loaded is really good. Same as this is my gun. You can, if you have enough credits or currency, you can start with this is my gun and then either get Deadeye and locked and loaded later. Slot 3, improves gun stabilization when shooting on the move. This is stable approach. This is kind of the only option. You can get dying fire for the reduced duration of fire by 2 seconds, and the damage received by fire by cut down by 50%. But I just prefer stable approach. Peripheral vision, don't get it, don't touch it. Useless waste of a perk slot. Alright, let's talk about the, just real quick. Grim Reaper, whenever you get a kill without dying, it improves your gun reload speed by 35% and increases the shadow critical damage by 50%. This means two things. One, you're going to be shooting people in less than about 1.2, 1.3 seconds as long as you hit the sweet spot. And when you crit, you'll do even more damage. So instead of a crit doing 1,000 damage per se, it might do, 1,250 instead. Our ability, it's nice for making sure you hit your crits. Close range and far range, it's nice for helping you secure kills. It also instantly reduces your bloom. So if you're trying to hit someone and your bloom is just still way too big, pop this ability on, and you'll be fine hitting the shot. It's also better than like Jaeger's passive or anything like that because it lasts for 15 seconds no matter how many shots you're able to get off. So sometimes when Grim Reaper pops, I will pop Ballistic Computer as well. Again, like I said, twin mountain machine guns, they're nice for finishing off an enemy when they're super, super low on health and you can't quite get to them to ram. You want to make sure you secure it for the passive. Smoke screen, just general smoke screen. Reaper does have thermals, which is nice, so you can see through your smokes. I just generally don't turn on my thermals. Alright, let's go over the mechanic real quick. So whenever you fire, you'll notice this bar comes across the screen. So if you do not hit the bar, you just have a completely standard reload. If you don't feel confident, it's actually better to not hit the bar. Because you notice if you do miss completely, you get a debuff instead of a buff. So normally your reload's 6 seconds. If you miss, you'll actually see that it goes up, which makes your DPM really low if you constantly miss. And now there's two buffs. If you hit the direct center, you're going to go down to 1.8, 1.9 seconds. This is without your passive. And if you hit the outside, you'll go down to about 3 seconds. So center buff is about a 60 to 70% reduction. Outside buff is about a 45 to 50% reduction. Again, the biggest reason why I don't use the machine guns as well is because you'll take a shot and, we'll ignore that. So you'll take a shot, you'll hit it, and then say you turn to this, well, you're already reloaded. So you're now wasting DPM because you're shooting the machine gun instead of actually loading. The only time I say the machine gun is worth it is if, like I said, you miss and hit the debuff instead. If you hit the debuff, you can instantly switch to the machine gun and start peppering someone. Now, another thing to kind of go over with Reaper is it does have the similar mechanic to Titan, so if you played quite a considerable amount of Titan, you should be very familiar with the mechanic. I know a lot of people got into the game and a first vehicle was either Titan or maybe Jaeger. With the fact that you played Titan, you know the mechanic for Titan was switched to the same one that Reaper has, so they're both the same now. Which definitely means that newer players will have an easier time with this vehicle as well. Even experienced players, it definitely feels very comfortable, kind of like a faster, more brawly Titan. Doesn't have the HP or anything like that, and I don't think it really needs it too much. It does have upgrades that give it a bit of health, which does make it feel nice and tanky. But definitely, I gotta say this is a fun vehicle. Uh, kind of has a little bit of everything. Got decent mobility, got decent traverse, uh, very punchy gun. You can make it work really well, and once you get a kill, it becomes an absolute monster. The only gripe I have is that uh, doesn't continue forever, and I understand why, because it's like it would suck for the enemies if a Reaper could continuously be on passive and infinitely have reduced like reload time and increased crit damage, but it would feel nice nonetheless. One thing I should mention about this vehicle is you always do want to have your hull facing the enemy. It's, like I said, great at face hugging, but when you get your side or anything shown, people generally have an easy time critting you, usually the back half of the vehicle. It's going to be engine and fuel tanks all day, every day. And if they get the back of the turret's pretty easy to hit. I do know the side of the turret can be a little trolly though, so it's not super easy for enemies to ammo-rack you from the side, like on, say, a Titan. The roundness definitely gives it an easier time to bounce those random shots off. And one thing I do kind of enjoy about this vehicle is if you do need to pick up a long shot kill, the R ability decreasing dispersion and everything just makes that super, super easy to do. Prevents people from getting away from you by running away. Because not only does it decrease dispersion when you're standing still, it's the same as if you were moving. So you can chase people around without worrying about your bloom kind of blowing up. And it does blow up quite a bit on Reaper. It's a pretty big thing I noticed early on. It does get better over time, but it's definitely never going to be like the levels on maybe a Jaeger or... Hell, I even think Kent has better aim time and bloom than Reaper does, to be fair. Overall, though, great vehicle. Definitely a good recommendation for beginners and experienced players alike. I think it's fun for whatever crowd decides to play it. Just because of those aspects. It punishes you for making mistakes and not hitting your perfect sweet spot, but whenever you hit those sweet spots on a consistent basis, it really does feel well.